A theater or playhouse, is a structure where theatrical works or plays are performed, or other performances such as musical concerts may be produced. A theater used for opera performances is called an opera house, while a theater is not required for performance. A theater serves to define the performance and audience spaces. The facility is traditionally organized to provide support areas for performers, the technical crew and the audience members. There are as many types of theaters as there are types of performance. Theaters may be built specifically for a certain types of productions. They may serve for more general performance needs, or they may be adapted or converted for use as a theater. They may range from open-air amphitheaters to ornate, cathedral-like structures to simple and decorated rooms or black box theaters. Some theaters may have a fixed acting area, while some theaters, such as black box theaters, may not, allowing the director and designers to construct an acting area suitable for the production. The most important of these areas is the acting space, generally known as the stage. In some theaters, specifically proscenium theaters, arena theaters and amphitheaters, this area is permanent part of the structure. In a black box theater, the acting area is undefined so that each theater may adapt specifically to a production. In addition to these acting spaces, there may be off-stage spaces as well. These include wings on either side of a proscenium stage where props, sets and scenery may be stored, as well as a place for actors awaiting an entrance. A prompter's box may be found backstage. In an amphitheater, an area behind the stage may be designated for such uses, while a black box theater may have spaces outside of the actual theater designated for such uses. Often a theater will incorporate other spaces intended for the performers and other personnel. A booth facing the stage may be incorporated into the house, where lighting and sound personnel may view the show and run their respective instruments. Other rooms in the building may be used for dressing rooms, rehearsal rooms, spaces for constructing sets, props and costumes, as well as storage. There are usually two main entrances. One is at the front, used by the audience, and leads into the back of the audience space, sometimes first going through a ticket booth. The second is called the stage door, and it is accessible from backstage. This is where the cast and crew enter and exit the theater, and fans sometimes wait outside it after the show in order to get autographs. Called stage dooring. This term can also be used to refer to going to a lot of shows or living in a big theater city, such as New York or Chicago. All theaters provide a space for an audience. The audience is usually separated from the performers by the proscenium arch. In proscenium theaters and amphitheaters, the proscenium arch, like the stage, is a permanent feature of the structure. This area is known as the auditorium or the house. Like the stage in a black box theater, this area is also defined by the production. The seating areas can include some or all of the following. Greek theater buildings were called a theatron. The theaters were large, open-air structures constructed on the slopes of hills. They consisted of three principal elements: the orchestra, the scene, and the audience. The centerpiece of the theater was the orchestra, or dancing place, a large circular or rectangular area. The orchestra was the site of the choral performances, the religious rites, and, possibly, the acting. An altar was located in the middle of the orchestra. In Athens, the altar was dedicated to Dionysus. Behind the orchestra was a large rectangular building called the scene. It was used as a backstage area where actors could change their costumes and masks, but also served to represent the location of the plays, which were usually set in front of a palace or house. Typically, there were 2 or 3 doors in the scene that led out onto orchestra, and from which actors could enter and exit. At first, the scene was literally a tent or hut, put up for the religious festival and taken down when it was finished. Later, the scene became a permanent stone structure. These structures were sometimes painted to serve as backdrops, hence the English word scenery. A temple nearby, especially on the right side of the scene, is almost always part of the Greek theatre complex, which could justify, as a transposition, the recurrence of the pediment with the later solidified stone scene. In front of the scene there may have been a raised acting area called the proscenium, the ancestor of the modern proscenium stage. It is possible that the actors acted entirely on the proscenium, but this is not certain. Rising from the circle of the orchestra was the audience. The audience sat on tiers of benches built up on the side of a hill. Greek theatres, then, could only be built on hills that we